Okay, I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. The first item we have is assignment for request for council action. We have several for finance. We have 1966, expenditure over $15,000 for fire safety services. 1967, then and now, for Pradco Fire Department. 1968, general liability insurance renewal. USI 1969, amending planning and zoning code, expand downtown parking district number 1. 1970, bids for job number 1033 Lafayette Road sidewalks. 1971, agreement with Ohio Edison, pole removals and relocations. 1972, City Hall parking structure design bid contractor. 1973, real estate purchase agreement, vacant land on South Elmwood. 1974, revision to job description and amend 3107 salaries and benefits code. 1975, budget amendments, and 1976, increased expenditure to MNJ Technologies, MCRC. Item number 2 we have is 1924, a follow-up discussion on South Broadway reconstruction project. Mr. Patton? This is your project.
I guess we're here to decide how to fund it. We are currently working on the plans. We expect to be done in about 3 to 4 weeks. At that time, we'll submit a request to council for authorization to bid and award. We do need to make a decision on the pavement type based on our last meeting. I believe it's pretty well accepted that we're going to have brick overlay over the concrete pavement. We need to verify that so we can finish the plans and then talk about funding.
I think, yeah, to give a little bit of a recap, we just had a meeting with all the residents and other members of the city to talk about exactly South Broadway, what we wanted to do, and I think we've all agreed that the brick should stay. I think we understand the importance of that, and the question came down to the funding of it, whether to be assessed, not assessed, or a combination of the two. And we also talked about at the meeting regarding the ordinance from 1982 or 83, I can't recall the exact year, that's in place as a result of a lawsuit with the residents at that time on South Broadway. Mr. Huber, you sent out a memo regarding the ordinance and kind of a solution or non-solution to what we can and can't do with respect to that. Can you give us a little summary of the result of that?
Well, basically, you can fund the brick road for South Broadway Street without assessment by simply not passing a resolution of necessity and asking Patrick to go ahead and bid it. And the next issue after that, assuming you want to do that, is whether you want to take up modifying our current ordinance or not. The question I've been asked is whether or not we can do something now as a council to bind future councils on what to do with our brick roads, and the only method I know to do that would be to pass a charter amendment. Essentially, you as a council are limited in terms of binding future councils on that issue. Future council would and probably should be able to have flexibility to decide what they want to do when the issue comes up at that time. You could simply repeal the current ordinance and simply go forward pursuant to the law provided by the Ohio Revised Code, which frankly is what most cities, and it's what we follow for assessing streets and sidewalks. And so whether that is what you want to do or not, that is what you will have to decide.
So my understanding from what you're telling us is that no matter if we pass an ordinance stating that we believe it's historical, we got to keep it historical, that really wouldn't be binding on any future councils. It would only be as far as a roadmap of what we believe it should be. We can't force them to agree with us.
Well, you can't force them, although your opinion in an ordinance form, I think, would be pretty persuasive for future councils. We've been heavily influenced by the ordinance that was passed back in 1983 for the obvious reasons, but you can't make it absolutely binding on future councils.
Understood. Does anybody have any questions on that memo that Mr. Huber sent to all of us and our options and ways we can?
So I was not specifically asked to do a memo, but I've been asked so many questions that I thought the best thing to do would try to put it down in writing to outline a few of the issues that I've been asked the most about.
So,
I have one question
Yes.
with regard to that memo, and that is, should this council decide to assess anything, these are the only three vehicles we could use, one of these three.
Well,
We
you
could
could-
make up a fourth one to suit the city.
Well, you have discretion to assess under the current ordinance at whatever percentage you want to,
Without changing.
without changing anything, correct?
So should we go X number of dollars per property?
Correct.
Okay.
so what we have to decide here as a council tonight is how do you want to handle that? I mean, there's been discussion, and we heard a lot of the residents talk about what has occurred back in the 80s and what they were assessed. I think they were assessed 98% of the cost of the road when it was first put brick, and 2% was paid by the city. And the argument, of course, is they didn't get what they paid for, right? I mean, they had a brick road that started to fail immediately or a few years thereafter, and they invested in it, and they feel that what they were given and what they paid for, they didn't receive. Now, any decision we make, of course, would be precedent setting as far as the other brick road on South Elmwood, or North Elmwood, on North Elmwood Street, because that's the only other brick road in the city. Now, I don't know the length of it, it's the same length or what, I didn't go out there and measure it, but I think it's pretty similar to what South Broadway would be. So what do we want to do as a city collectively? Now, there's always arguments of, hey, we asked them to pay for it once and it wasn't what they received, so we should go ahead and pay for it because that's kind of our obligation. That's the one argument, of course. The other argument is, well, there's an ordinance in place, there was evidently controversy back in the 80s, and maybe they should vote on it, maybe they shouldn't vote on it. That's what the ordinance provides, right? Now, anything we do, if we try to decide to assess anything, that would be what would happen, would be that they would have to make a decision of what they do. Even if we assess $100, the ordinance doesn't differentiate between the amount, it just says assess, not assess. And there's assessment, they have to go make a determination if they wanted to keep it brick. And that would kind of be out of our hands as far as the brick road is concerned, unless we wanted to pay for it all. Then we have total control of the composition of the road itself. Meaning if the city paid for it, we can, we would incur the entire cost, which, if we remember, it's about $234,000 or so of what we're trying to take out. Now, the only thing that's different in my mind with the residents on South Broadway and the entire city is, well, what is our obligation or what is our vision or whatever you want to call it with respect to the entire city? Because some people don't live on South Broadway. Well, most people don't live on South Broadway. And so do we feel that it's important enough that everybody in the city should contribute? That's kind of what we're looking at. So what do you guys think? Bill, put you on a hot seat first.
Well, it's not a hot seat for me. I actually thought I thought I had heard maybe a majority decision at the last meeting we had. I don't know that we have to rehash the whole thing again, but it isn't simply, I think, that there was a referendum and an ordinance written, and the people on the street were assessed, and then they didn't get what they want. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the road, about the history of the road and the road itself, and about the referendum. The referendum was generated in large part, it was not simply about the brick, but it was generated because of the width of the road. The paving of the road would be widened like all roads would be, and so it was going to be widened, and then it was going to be paved. And so it was kind of those two things, but the widening was the biggest, it started out as the bigger issue. And then when we researched the road, when this issue came up again, it was, the other part of the misunderstanding is the road was never rebuilt. Once all this got hashed out in the 1980s, the road wasn't rebuilt, the road was simply fixed. There were fixes made to the road. So there was an assessment to fix the brick street, but the brick street wasn't pulled out and a base put in and all, from corner to corner, it was not rebuilt. The road was fixed. There was an assessment to upgrade the road, and to file the referendum in the part of keeping it brick and keeping the road the same width that it was. So as we looked at the history of the road when this came up early in the beginning, the road was built around 1917. So if you look at 1917 to 2019, that road has never been redone. There is no other street in the city that has sat there not rebuilt for that many years, which is 100 years. So, as we discussed at length in the last meeting, I think the residents spoke to it. Yes, I think we heard a majority of residents say they want to keep it in brick, and yes, I think we heard that they would like to keep it in brick and not be assessed. If we look at it from the other angle, which is the historic angle, that in the 70s, all the brick streets in Medina were both widened and paved. There was numerous brick streets that were just paved over. So they are the only two remaining brick streets that we have. And we are a community, really our soul and heart is in preservation. You know, drives our economy, it's what we do, we've done best. And you can look at historic preservation just two ways, really. You either look at it as the long game, or you don't look at it at all. And I've always thought about it as being somewhat analogous to going to a funeral. You know, when someone dies, you go to the funeral, or you don't go. And if you don't go, you don't get another, you know, it's like, oh, well, I'll go next time, because people just die once. And so when you take things apart, like this road, if you take this apart and pave this road, that's gone. It's not gonna come back. So I think we owe it to the history of the road, we owe it to what we do here we've done here in Medina to create the economy that we have. And I think we owe it to the people that live there, because the street was never properly redone in the first place. What they had asked for was to keep it brick and keep it the same width as it was patched. So I'm not in favor of the assessment at all. I think it would be a huge mistake. And I think if we said, okay, we're going to assess, and I don't know, there's a lot of folks here, if we said, okay, we're going to assess, I think some folks would go, okay, then we'll get brick. You know, we'll pay it. And then we lose that chunk of our history. And it's a small amount of money when you look at the money that's been invested in this city toward preservation, to have the image that we have, the thing we put the Christmas lights on, the reason the crowds come here, the expansion to the south of town for the South Town District, and what we're working to go there. I think all those things play into this, that it would be, to me, it's a no-brainer. You know, it's money well spent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Medina's website says preserving the past and forging the future. So we always will have historic elements in the city that we have to judge on whether we should keep them or move into the future. This obviously is one that has some historical significance. It's one of the last remaining roads that are that width and brick. And the circumstances in 1983, I think guide us into the direction that we are going to keep it brick. As far as assessment, another aspect of it is area-specific need. Like someone here, a student member said that most residents of the city do not live on South Broadway. So we always constantly are balancing the needs of a specific item versus the needs of the whole city. But again, in this case, I think based on the circumstances, based on the history, and based on the future also, as well as thinking of the future of Medina, that we go ahead and repair it or redo it as brick and do not assess the residents.
Jim?
For two reasons, I guess I want to point out. One, I agree with Bill, when you look back in the early history of this road, that it was not properly done. This property's paid for it, they didn't get what they paid for it. We've never corrected that. This is our chance to correct that. The second reason, as I look at everything we do, whether it's the signalization project uptown, we paid extra to have a certain look of poles and crosswalk signs that blended in with the city. I look at the north side of town, we paid extra to have those lights down the middle because we wanted that image of the historical special place to live here that Medina is. this is the same thing. I feel like we're just paying a little bit extra to preserve the history and keep the image that we value so much here. So I do not want to assess anybody, but I do want it to be brick.
Danny?
Thank you. I have mixed emotions. One, I agree that the historic value is, you can't put a dollar figure on that. I do agree that we should move forward with the brick. The problem that I'm dealing with is, like you mentioned, there's only a few people that live on that. And I have been contacted, not by a lot, but probably 3 or 4 people that are against us spending the extra money for the brick. They went as far as saying that, my street has been in such disrepair for so long, and that individual happened to live on Tide Drive, and it wasn't you. But they actually mentioned that they were, consider giving it a class action suit if we spent that extra money to fix that road without addressing the other streets. And I spent at length telling them that back in 2003, we passed an income tax at 0.25% of the increase on the income taxes spent for streets, sidewalks, and storm sewers, and that we as a city have been able to accomplish far and above what other communities our size have been able to do with reconstructing the streets. I agree that the residents that have, if there's a lot of them still the same residents back in 1983 that were assessed, and the project wasn't done up to what it should have been. And I fall back on that to probably in 2000, I think it was 6 or 2008, when we reconstructed Guilford Boulevard. And at that time, the mayor, which was Jane Lever, brought in and put pieces of concrete in each of our council's mailbox at that time. Some of them was less than 2 inches thick. The desire and design for it called for I can't remember, it was 4 to 6 inches of concrete, but at that time, the city didn't go out and supervise projects, road projects. So at that time, the developers and contractors were able to skimp on the amount of concrete that they put down as skimped on repairing your brick streets, and they made money, obviously. Now that doesn't happen in the city of Medina. When there's a reconstruction done, there is people from the city that's out there supervising almost every step of the project. In saying that, I know there's still, even though we've done so many reconstruction projects in the city, we're never going to be able to get 99 miles of roadway. We're never going to be able to keep up with the needs of replacement and reconstruction. And just even though I only heard from a few residents that didn't live on the Broadway side that felt really uncomfortable using our tax dollars, and I agree with Jim, we've spent extra money on a lot of things in the historic district to encourage people to use our historic district and encourage people to live outside of our community to come in and enjoy our community. As the mayor always referenced, we don't always realize what we got because we're used to it and we live here, where other people, they come in and they do think that our community is special. And I do believe that the brick roads on South Broadway and the brick road on Elmwood is special. And I think it does add to our historic preservation. Now, as far as assessment, I don't think that the residents should be assessed for the entire amount of the project. But even, I would feel more comfortable even a nominal fee of $50 to $100 per resident to say that, yes, you're committed, and showing that to the rest of the residents that don't feel as strongly. So I would be in favor of a nominal assessment, wanting it to maintain brick, and I hope that if we could come up with a nominal fee, that you would be able to live with that. And I do realize the importance of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I don't know that I can add anything more to what's already been said, other than we do know that Medina is a very special place. It is made up of a bunch of neighborhoods, individual pieces, parts, and South Broadway not being any of the least of those. And all of those together make Medina this special place. then we do need to preserve that. I do agree with Mr. Simpson that some nominal fee, something that's not going to break anybody's budget, on a per property owner basis, as opposed to per foot or anything like that, would be something that, again, would show the commitment of the residents on the street, or the property owners on the street, that they too want to maintain the historic value of the street.
Eric?
When you started, you asked about the obligation and the vision for the city. I believe that our obligation to the city is started well before I was part of this council, or even born here, that we were going to make this a historical look to everything that we do. And it's taken a lot of time, it's taken a lot of effort, it's taken a lot of vision from people all over, people that aren't even here anymore. And we have done that in our downtown, and we are slowly expanding that farther and farther and farther. We have an obligation to the citizens who voted in the 1980s that they wanted to protect these roads then. They had a vision that they wanted to keep those, and they voted. We followed through with an ordinance to cover that. So I believe wholeheartedly that these 2 brick roads can be the beginning of those corridors that lead into our neighborhoods to help us keep that vision of the historic Medina. It's not just the downtown business feel, that it means also to the residents, the households, the community as a whole. And there are many people in our community right now that are going above and beyond because they really believe in that idea. And I think the city should take their part in that too. And roads is one of those things that is our responsibility to do. For the people that are afraid that, they want the brick street in front of their house, they may sue or anything like that to get it, we're not selecting these residents to treat them any better. The city as a whole already voted that they wanted those residents to keep that brick street. Right? It's already there. This is not something new that we're going after. So we're doing exactly what they've asked us to before, and we're preserving the past. On top of all that, the people that paid for it in the 80s, it was done wrong. Their money was not used properly. Then it sat there and was not repaired. And I think the city as a whole was afraid to go back and fully fix that road the way it should be, because they knew that they'd have to go back and assess again, and they'd bring back all these problems. So if we start assessing, are we going to be afraid to bring up this debate again and again if there are major problems with the road? And I think if there are major problems, it is our responsibility to go out there and do that. We shouldn't just sit on this road forever and let it deteriorate again. We should take responsibility for it, say it is our road, it is our history, and continuously go out there and maintain it like we do every other road in the city. So from my point of view, I believe it is the city's responsibility to pick up the cost of these brick roads and make it known that we are doing so because it is a historical part of Medina, and that is why we are doing so.
Well, I guess I'm the last one to chime in on it. And, I gave a lot of thought to this, and I remember going out to lunch one day in the city of Akron and walking down because they're redoing the whole downtown Akron, and it's a traffic nightmare. But I go over and look at the cross-section of the road that they cut out half the road, and about a foot below the asphalt and the concrete mixed in was a brick road. And here in the city of Akron, I guess maybe all of downtown used to be brick at one time. And it got me thinking a little bit about, why did they do brick back in the day? What was so unique? Because it had to be very expensive. I don't think it was readily available. Maybe they didn't have asphalt, but everything was brick back then, and they paved it all over, but they didn't remove the brick. So evidently they found that the brick foundation was good enough to put a asphalt covering over it. But it kind of got me thinking a little bit about where else all in Northeast Ohio was every community brick, was downtown Cleveland all brick, was everywhere that we know brick, and they just paved it all over. Which kind of made me think of, it's kind of unique to have a brick road. There's not many communities that have brick roads, and that's why I support 100% that we keep the brick roads. But then it led me to the next question of, well, where's that money come from? Because as we know, Patrick gave us a quote of 1.2 million or so to redo the road without brick, and it's about 1.45 million with the brick. That's about the $34,000 in there. So it's a little bit more expensive, not greatly expensive, but it's more expensive, and that made me think of, well, that's why everybody else around the Northeast Ohio stopped doing brick, because of cost. And it always comes down to cost, and I'm the first one to say that, well, we always got to figure out where's the money coming from. And I do understand in this situation, the repair efforts back in the 80s didn't succeed as was planned, and the residents paid for most of it, and you know, what are we trying to show our children? What are we trying to show the future? Though I kind of agree with Paul and Denny that there has to be some kind of contribution, I do understand that that may be difficult for some people, and, you know, what are we here for? What are we here as a community for? What does the community do? But try to preserve those things that everybody likes to see, right? And try to fix the road so it'll last a long time. And I don't know, I got maybe along the way convinced that a brick road will last 100 years, because everybody's saying it's 100 years long, and maybe it will, and hopefully it will, because as long as the heaving, and hopefully we don't have the heaving of the bricks in the winter, and we plow it in such a way we don't rip the bricks out, because that'll be detrimental to it, but I trust Nino will do the right thing on that. And so when it comes down to it, what do we do with this road? And it appears from everybody here that it sounds like the city's gonna pick up the cost of it, because there's not enough votes to say that the residents have to assess it. So, I mean, I'm okay with that too, but I do feel for the rest of the cities, and I do residents of the city, I do understand what Denny's saying about we're an entire city, and there's some people are gonna be on one side of it saying, oh, you know, why should we pay for it because we don't live there? And there's people that are there that said, well, maybe we should pay for it because it's historic and we live there, so what do we do? And for the 2 brick roads that we have in the city left, and that's far less than the 90 miles of roads that we have in the city, you know, we have to probably do the right thing, and it seems like the right thing is we're gonna pay for it. And we're gonna put it down, and we're gonna have it be there for a long time, and it's hopefully gonna be an asset to the city, and the city has a future, right? So I guess we're gonna take a vote, but I think I know where the vote's gonna go. But I think that we understand the issue. We do understand and appreciate the issue, and it's very difficult. When you spend city's money, $1.4 million is not a little bit amount of money, and we think hard about it. We think hard about where the money should come from, how the money should be spent, and hopefully we do the right thing most of the time. Now, it's not to say we do the right thing all the time, but most of the time I think we try to do the right thing, right? So, do I have a motion to approve South Broadway reconstruction project with the city picking up the cost of the entire road in brick?
So moved. Second?
Any further discussion or comment? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Six,
And-
6-1.
I just want to say on my vote of no, it's nothing against anybody here, and I want it to remain brick. Please know in my heart of hearts, I do believe in the historical value, and I do believe that it should be a brick road. Thank you.
Mayor?
Was it 6-1?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So before we move on, I'd respectfully ask, I don't know if you want to do it tonight, if not, we can do it another time, but I would ask the council to get rid of this ordinance that's been kicked down the road for,
30-something.
going on 40. Because it's been so problematic, I've watched what my law director did, I've watched why the other law directors didn't want to get involved in it, and I don't want to pass this on to another mayor, to another council down the road. If you don't want to do it tonight, that's fine,
Well,
we can bring it back.
Let's
but-
talk about that. I guess what we could do is, and I think everybody was in favor of this as far as in designating these 2 roads as kind of a historic to the city and need to be preserved, and maybe the ordinance authorizing the reconstruction of South Broadway, we should put some language in that ordinance that kind of indicates our acknowledgement that we do believe that not only North Elmwood, but South Broadway should remain brick, and we believe they're in historic in nature, and we would like to see that happen, even though we can't force future councils to do this and maintain it as a brick road. At least we give them our impression and our observation, and I guess we're going back to our vision of what we want these roads to look like and remain.
And I think that carries weight, though, because if you think about it, in 40 years or 30 or 40 years, if there's an issue on South Broadway, we won't be here, but there'll be another council who will face that issue, but they'll have to determine that, make that same determination, but they'll be kind of in the same position that we're in now, I think, with that kind of thoughtful deliberation. Like Denny said, he kind of had one idea, he liked the brick, we all had that idea, but I think every council would look at it that way, but we're not binding them, but they'll still face that same, the same decisions and the same thoughtfulness they'll have to give to it. But I agree with the mayor, I think we should, if not now, we certainly, I think, want to get rid of the way that ordinance was written really puts the people that live on the street in a bind to try to figure out, you know, which neighbor am I gonna get along with? The concrete neighbor or the brick neighbor? You know, I mean, and that just seems like a very strange way to construct an ordinance to go forward on the surface of a street. And if we get rid of it, then,
And I don't know, Bill, if it's this existing ordinance that helped us, but when we reconstructed South Harmony Street, the residents there wanted to keep the road at the same width of, I think, with 20 feet if it's, and it was just by a vote of council that we were able to do that. I don't know if the ordinance actually had an effect on that.
No, because this ordinance deals just with the two brick roads and
Okay.
binds you, binds the administration and pits neighbor against neighbor, and I don't
Right,
ever
right.
want to see that happen again. You ultimately have the discretion under the state law to determine assessment versus non-assessment, be it a brick street or any street for that matter. But I don't want to see us have to go down the same path again. And
Right.
again, if tonight's not the night, that's fine. I would just like to get us back to this in the future, or if there's enough will on council tonight to do away with this ordinance that's been so problematic, I say do away with it.
Well, Kathy, when we put together the ordinance as far as the reconstruction of South Broadway, we need to put some whereas clauses regarding our intent of the historic nature of the brick road, both on South Broadway and on, I guess, North Elmwood. So when we put that together, that's fine. Now, I'm trying to, what is the exact ordinance number again? Because there's a bunch of them in here. Is it 7382, or what ordinance do we want to repeal? I don't have that handy, because there's a bunch of different things that were done at that time.
It's 903.
903.
That's, well, section 90301A3. That's what I have. I don't know what ordinance that was with that. That's
Is
the,
that it, Mr.
that's the section, ordinance section number 90301.
I don't have my memorandum in front of me, but whatever it was that I referenced in the memorandum, that's the ordinance.
I think it was 90301.
Now there's a subsection to that.
A3.
B3.
I just want to make sure that's the right section. Because we're going to repeal that section.
tonight?
Yeah, why not? You guys
Yeah,
right?
why not?
You guys okay with doing that
Yeah.
tonight? I don't think there's any problem with
Yes, sir.
that. 90301,
301B is in boy 3.
a B3 or, oh, a B3, yeah. There's an A3 too, but okay. So 90301B3, do I have a motion to repeal that?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of repealing 90301B3?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we're gonna have to go to council with an ordinance on that.
Yes, that's correct. All right, well, that solves South Broadway. Any other street out there wants to? All right, well, thanks for everybody coming, and thanks for your input. Again, when the residents came and gave input, that was very helpful. It's good to know the history. You know, we sit up here as your representatives, we don't know it all. It's impossible. So, we appreciate it. Okay, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, because it's very exciting. Just want to let you know.
And you're welcome to stay too if you want to. This is great television.
Okay, we have 1966 expenditure of $15,000 for fire safety services. If you want to leave, you can go ahead and leave. We'll give you 30 seconds. It's an honor.
You're a bone.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for being way after him.
It's a nice
One guy out of the whole thing.
It's a big city. Gotta remember, it's a big city. 26,000 people.
I'm
And
glad
I'm
it's
93 years old and looking at that one guy.
Did you ever have the beer with Pat Patton? You gotta go have the beer with Pat Patton.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Here's the other one.
Sorry about that, Denny.
Yeah, thank you.
I was about to remove him, but
That's fine. Okay, Chief Painter?
Yeah, this is for the purchase of 8 cents a turnout here. It's actually 18,760. They're good for 10 years, but some of the new guys we hired, they just don't fit, so we have to order them.
They're too small?
Some they just don't fit. Sometimes they don't. Yeah, not too small, but these are from Fire Decks right here in town. Fire Safety is the distributor we have to go through, and they do give us special pricing on it.
Any questions for the Chief?
Mr. President?
Oh,
I'm going to have to abstain. and this is, I've got a family member who works for fire decks.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Motion carries. 1967, the then and now for Pradco for the fire department. Chief?
This was supposed to be pulled.
That's gonna be.
It was, yeah, it was a mistake. Lorraine already had a purchase order, and then I had started it after that.
All right, it's pulled.
Wait, excuse me, could you do a motion to?
Is there a
remove it?
motion to acknowledge the removal of 19067?
Move to remove 19067 from the finance
Second.
agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 19068, general liability insurance, USI renewal. Mayor? Issue?
Yeah, I'm trying to catch up to you. Okay, so I apologize for this, having to come to Finance and Council with the emergency clause tonight. It expired April 1st. I sent an email. We were not notified of the amount until March 29th. That's when we received it, which was a Friday, by the way. And that's when we received it. They were going back and forth with the underwriters, trying to get the numbers to us. That required me to send an email to the insurance company asking them to bind the coverage, which means we're still covered with the intent of passing it. It's a 2.3% increase, so the number is not problematic. It's just the process was. I've also asked them to start months earlier next time so that we're not put in this position again. So I respectfully ask council, finance committee, and subsequently council to pass this with the emergency clause because it expired on April 1st and we're riding on last year's coverage.
And I guess the only thing I would say is maybe next year when they have this brokerage fee commission, that the commission's a full commission if it's 6 weeks in advance and it starts ratcheting down. So if it gets to the deadline, they get zero commission.
We'll see if they'll entertain it, Mr. President.
All right.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
I do have a question.
Yes,
sir.
Paul.
I noticed here that we've got a list of all of our assets, cars, trucks, or whatever. Who's responsible for keeping this list updated?
Sherry does a good job. As we take things to auction, and they sell at auction, then we take those off, or like the chief, council authorized the chief to get rid of some fire vehicles. So we try to keep as good a chance as we can, but it's always nerve-wracking to have one person responsible for all of that. So she also double checks with each of the department heads. This is the vehicles I have listed for you. These are the buildings that I have listed, and make sure that we haven't added anything or deleted anything
How often does she do that?
annually.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
in July, chief gets his 3 new police cars, 4 new police cars. Will they be
And then-
added to this
Yeah,
list?
then they'll be added to this
Okay,
list,
and
yes.
the ones
And the
that-
ones that go to auction are removed then in the fall.
Kathy takes care of the title, if I may, we give the
Right.
titles to
Yeah,
Kathy,
list
and
as well.
Okay.
it's
Go
a
over it
process.
once a year between the two of us, and I let her
Right.
know what was sold at auction.
Okay.
We do the best we can, yes, sir.
Oh, I know, it's daunting, I know that.
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Second, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 1969, amending planning and zoning code, expand the downtown parking district. Number 1, Jonathan.
Yes, actually, if we could just postpone this one, leave it on the agenda, but postpone it. Additional information was found about a week ago that substantially changes the information that I provided with the RCA, so if we can just
Okay, we'll
postpone
postpone
it
it
for
to the
now,
next,
but keep it on the agenda.
next finance meeting. We'll put it back on and review.
We
it.
may need more time than that.
Okay,
So
next couple finance
Put
meetings.
it on hold,
We're going to table it for an indefinite period of time.
yeah, and I'll
Until
circle
we-
back with Kathy about
Okay.
putting it back on.
Okay,
Thank you.
1970 bids for job number 1033 Lafayette Road sidewalks. Who's this, Patrick?
Yes, sir.
Yes. This is a CDBG project, which means most of the funding for this is coming from the grant. This will install sidewalks on the south side of Lafayette Road, starting at South Huntington Street and extending to Oak Street.
Questions?
Just want to say thank you, Patrick, and really thrilled to see this happening. It's been something since I've been on council that I've had residents ask me about that on that stretch, so thank you for putting this together and that it's a reality finally. Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We're going to take 8 and 9 together because you got to do 9 without doing 8. You can't do one without the other. So Patrick, let's do the City Hall parking structure design build contractor, and if you can give an update of the process, project, recommendations,
Okay.
all the fun stuff.
You got visual displays here too.
Oh, that's great.
We, as you know, went through our design build process for the parking deck. We had 5 design builders submit statements of qualifications. We narrowed those down to 3 and invited them to submit proposals. It's a 2-part process. They submit both the technical proposal and the cost proposal. We reviewed those proposals, and this past Thursday, our design review committee met and listened for several hours. They did an oral presentation, interview each of the 3 design teams. That committee was myself, Jonathan Mendel, Mr. Coyne, Chip Klinkenberg, he's a local architect with Ellis Architects, and Leslie Traves, she's the chair of the Historic Preservation Board. Based on that, we rated each of these submittals. The 3 design teams submitted a total of 5 proposals. 2 of them submitted the base proposal that we required, plus an alternate of their own design. After all that was done, we had 2 that came in tied. The committee tied them in terms of technical proposal, and I'll show you those. The following day, we opened the cost proposals, and I've got that information here for you too. It's very close. Our consultant recommends one of these, but we wanted to present these to you. The best way to handle this first. This is, Rulin submitted an alternate proposal. Our RFQ laid out a footprint, which basically the garage would be oriented north and south, over here, this way, so that the west half of the existing city parking lot and the green space for the Masonic Temple would be, was not part of the footprint, and that you'll see in the next one. Rulin in their alternate are proposing to put a parking deck, 2-story parking deck that would span from Elmwood all the way across the frontage of City Hall. So that's the footprint for that. This is
Additional cost or the same cost around?
costs are coming around. The way it works is 3.8 million was the budget. And they've got to submit something that meets that budget.
Okay.
And 4 of the 5 proposals did. The 5th one out of, we've got to just throw them, they're not being considered because they were over budget. But these 2 each meet that budget. Rulin's, this is what it would look like. It's kind of a rendering. This canopy is not included. That was one of their deductions to get it to 3.8 million exactly. In this orientation, City Hall is right here. This is that sidewalk in front of City Hall. And you'd kind of be standing on South Elmwood at the corner of City Hall looking at least southeast, I guess.
Where's City Hall?
Over here. This is the sidewalk that goes right in front of City Hall.
So the entrance to the parking deck is the entrance to City Hall right now?
The parking lot, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is the alternate. Where to put that?
And tell me how many spaces are in that one?
And that one, there are 218 spaces in the deck, in the parking deck.
And eliminates, there's really no surface parking anymore?
No surface parking. The other submittal was from a company called CPS. They're out of Pittsburgh. First of all, the orientation is a little different, but I'm not sure where to stand here. This is in the footprint that we defined, which is basically the eastern, starting at the parking lot between Sully's and Porter's, coming back, I think it was 90 foot to allow that, future development there, but then going all the way up to City Hall on the eastern side of the City Hall. It leaves some surface parking in front of City Hall and leaves that Masonic Temple green space, for lack of a better word.
Now, how many spaces are in that deck?
That deck has 200 spaces in the parking deck, and it maintains 16 additional spaces in the existing parking lot
Of City Hall.
of City Hall.
So it's 2 spaces difference.
2 spaces, right. I'll put these over here. And this is the rendering. This would kind of be standing at the back of Sully's, looking towards City Hall. And this one, in this
Trying to help, I don't know what to
presentation.
do.
Yeah, I'm not sure. This is
Try
City
not to
Hall
get
here.
hit.
So this is where the deck would be. This is like the Masonic Temple.
So that's CPS right there.
But this is CPS, yeah. And this one, as you can see, was 3.68 million. As their base
And Pat, the parking spots down in the front, is that the federal court?
bid. Yeah, these would be the courts, that's not ours. This is the City Hall parking deck, and this is the grassy area. So I'll leave those over here too.
So, as a member of the committee, they're very close as far as the technical design and the parking and the costs and all that. But there are some differences that I just want to point out that you guys may make a decision on, that on CPS's deck, you just have to notice, they're 3.68 million, but just notice that the towers are on the east side of the deck. Whereas the Rulin, there's a tower on the east side and there's a tower on the northwest side. There's a tower on the northwest side in that picture you're looking at. Now, the difference is here, you can see this has less brick, just because of the cost. Rulin's a little different because it's two-story, it has more brick. This one, you can see the entrance, there's no defined entrance here. It's just a drive right in. There's not any kind of differentiation about what it looks like. Where you see that they have a stairwell on that side, you can see there's a difference on that. This side keeps the green space of about 10,000 square foot footprint on Elmwood, where that one gets rid of it. This one goes 90 feet from Liberty, where that one goes about 135 feet, or 140 feet. It's one of the two, 135, 140.
135.
So there's a difference there. This one is a multi-story. You can see where the other deck ends up top here, where that one's just a flat kind of two-story with a ramp going up, where this one's a little bit different, a little bit smaller, a little bit higher than the other one. Now, the difference that, you gotta take into consideration, this one has parking in front of the deck, which is shown, you can't really see it, but here you see the front little gray spot. That's parking in front of the deck, is not covered. So you're probably gonna have to cover it. They're handicap spots, so you probably want them covered. My opinion is, because you don't want them parking in the snow and everybody else. So, and there's a little walkway that they have covered on the sidewalk that goes into the deck. The biggest thing to look at, I guess, is you gotta think about, well, what do you really want? That one takes a lot of footprint up of the city hall. It creates the whole front of city hall that's gonna be covered, but it does create a little bit more, like I said, 135 feet by 140 feet. If you wanted the CIC to have somebody build on that, they'd have a little bigger area to build. Maybe that gives them more creativity. The advantage that I see with that was only that they'll build a bigger building, they'll pay more taxes, and more money will go to help pay for the deck. But it eliminates this spot, so you don't have this spot. So if you ever wanted to do office here, that's gone, but you do get it now rather than later. I don't know which is better. That's why we looked at it. It's probably 1.5 dozen or another. You kind of get both, but one will happen now, one will probably happen later. That's the only difference. And if this is gone, if you ever had a problem with the court, you can't build a court here anymore because there's nowhere to build it. So that's kind of a negative.
Would that be big enough?
Yeah, it's a 10,000.
It's a 10,000 square
yeah.
foot block
Yeah.
that you could go multiple levels.
3 levels, that's big enough. So it's a trade-off. So these are all trade-offs. So you have to think about, well, what do you think will be best for the city now and in the long run? I mean, it's all up to you individually what you think. But there are advantages to both of them, right? So you just gotta determine what you want and what you like. Now, if this goes in front of the Historic Preservation Board, my guess is there'll probably be some changes to this. Of course, the entrance and maybe a cover over the parking, so there's gonna add cost to it. So there's gonna be a give and take. So you gotta take that into consideration in making your mind up which one you like best. Because I think they're both about equal. So what do you like more now, or what do you like more later? That's what we're kind of looking at. So that's kind of my observation sitting on the committee. I think both parties are great. They're both good to do. One's from Pittsburgh and one's from Sharon Township, so there's that local component. So you gotta make a determination, which direction do you wanna go? So, Mayor, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Well, the other thing is, originally, we were looking at 80 deep by 130, 140. This actually comes, if this is done, although it takes up the green space and it's not available, it does give more depth. So, like, to about the back of Sully's. So if you imagine maybe more narrow businesses, but instead of 3, maybe 4 or 5, because now you have more depth and narrower, kind of like what we have immediately to the east there. So that's a balance. I'm a bit apprehensive of giving away the space that could be saved for either a second commercial use that could be TIFed or a court if things don't work out. I'm not expecting that they won't, but I always like to have alternatives. That alternative is gone if we go to this.
So what questions do you have that we can answer, Pat or I? We were in the committee, we can let you know. I mean, it all comes down to what you think is the best option, long run from the city. If you think that there's more development potential on East Liberty rather than on Elmwood, that's a consideration. One has more brick, of course, one does not. That's a consideration. One has more covered parking than the other one. One's is only 2 stories, one's 2.5 stories. Those are just the things that are peculiar to each individual taste of a council person, I guess, of what you think will be better.
I like the one with more brick, for sure. And I don't know, it would seem to me that the development potential on East Liberty would be of more value than Elmwood. But I understand Mayor, I understand what you're saying, if in fact the court project falls through. But I don't particularly like the design of that building. And it seems like maybe this would be better use of the space, you know, if we take the court out of the picture. This is better use of the space, and that East Liberty, like you said, you could make maybe a little narrower, but deeper, you know, because some of those buildings in the square they're kind of like shotgun buildings, actually. They are deep.
Well, if you think about Sully's, Dan's Dogs, all of those
they go
yes.
way back.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, and I guess this would be okay, yeah, I guess if we want to keep the court in the picture, that spacing, that footprint would be, that would work, but I'd like it to look more, I think, more
Well,
like
Jonathan
this.
had a concern of that design about just the disruption with City Hall. Because look at that design. When that's being built, where are people gonna go? Where are they gonna park?
In that county parking lot that we just bought.
Well, I guess right, the other point is, we talked a little bit about, well, what's gonna happen to the federal building? Because the federal building is located where the federal judge wants it to be located, and there's nothing to say in the future that the federal judge will be around here in Medina.
Right.
And so that building may be sold in the future too. We don't know the timing of it because federal appointments are for life. So the question is that 20 years away? I don't know.
But what would your point be, though?
Well, it's gonna be up for sale.
And then what?
I don't know what you use it for. I mean, could it maybe be used for more retail, or is it gonna be used for another city function? Could it be used, would we even get it? I don't know. We don't know any of those things. It's just something to say it's not gonna be there forever. That's my whole point.
I agree with Bill as far as the footage and frontage on Liberty Street at this time more than Elmwood. Now, that could change 20 years from now, but right now, I like the Elmwood. As far as the consideration for the court, after the years of discussion, if it would fall, the current proposal falls through, before this came up again, we were talking about using the existing site for remodeling, adding on of the Muni Court now I'm talking about, versus building a brand new structure. So, that, I don't know if that's off the table again, but I thought the last directions that we were going was, before the current proposal come up, was using the existing site. I like the green space being left on that, whether we use it for a court or other retail. But I agree with Bill, I like the brick. Visually, I like that building more than this one.
The existing site over there, we could get the square footage necessary for more courtrooms and things like that, but it didn't eliminate within the old building the safe movement of in-custody victims and citizens. Staff and citizens. So that was why we started to look at maybe over here when we took the Masonic Temple down, to build brand new, that would free up that other building for us. The other thing that that one is a bit problematic with is this lets us keep from the glass doors to Elmwood parking for handicap and customers, whereas this, the parking is gone, totally gone, both during the construction and until it's ready to use.
But the only
Not
advantage is
that
it's
we-
uncovered parking. I mean, that's
I'm sorry?
The only advantage is it's all covered now. I guess the first level.
Understood. It's just we have to find some mechanism to, I mean, it's one thing to tell customers and employees, you have to park next to the Moose and you have to park down by Elmwood, Napa, or over at the county, but handicapped folks, that's not gonna work. Now, could we take the front area there where there's not a curb outside the doors and make a couple of handicap spots? The disadvantage is then they have to come to the back of the building because they can't get up the steps. You know, so there's other things that we just don't have our heads around quite yet, because this is the first time we've seen all these as well.
Now, two other things with this is this alternate that Rulon did. Now, they didn't follow the rules, right? But we talked to the Desmond, who was the architect leading us, and they said, yes, sometimes people think outside the box to save money, and that's what Rulon did, because they didn't follow the rules. But I guess everybody had the opportunity to do something different outside the rules.
So when this was the alternate, they didn't submit.
They did. But their deck was kind of like this deck, but had no brick, had no stairways, had nothing. It was all open. Because they couldn't do it within the parameters of 3.8 million. So it was kind of like a 1950s deck, if you will, meaning there was nothing. It was just,
Yeah.
it was just the, for the sides, it was just the ribbon of cable around the deck, and that was it. That's what it looked like. I mean, we had a picture of it.
Could this deck though not, if we went with that as a footprint, could that deck then not be designed to look more like this?
Oh, yeah, for another 500,000, probably 400,000, I don't remember what the number is, but something like that. That's the cost difference.
So this one came in at what?
3.68 million. It's just a design, because that one was only 2 stories, it's just a lot more flatter concrete. When it's ramped like this, that's where the costs come into play, and so that's the difference. This one's bigger, as you can see, the footprint's bigger.
Yeah.
But it doesn't ramp as much, so that's why the cost is different. I think that's why they did.
But if it's a concern about because you're right, I mean, I don't know when you do construction like this, where do you put people if you eliminate all the parking? But if it's a concern about having that saving that space for the courthouse, then some extra cost might be worthwhile.
Now, the other thing you have to keep in mind, that both of these projects will be done the 1st of December this year. They said they both can meet the timeline. They said maybe a little bit, they could push it to the end of November to get this one done, but I think they said, what, the middle of December, December 19th on this one?
Yeah, our required completion date was December 20th, and they both beat that.
Yep.
They were within like 2 weeks of each other, too.
Is that before the candlelight walk?
No, they won't get it done before the Candlelight Walk,
Oh.
unless it's a beautiful summer, I guess, and they can work every day, but who knows? Because they have weather days in there. So.
Sure.
Kimberly,
What was the cost for Rulon's proposals?
3.8,
So they're right at the 3.8.
yes.
And then with regard to the space for the courthouse, do they pay property tax? Because I'm not sure that's going to benefit from being in the TIF.
No, they don't.
Yeah, the court
So that's-
would not be a TIF option. If we commercialized it, it would be a TIF option.
Well, that's the biggest difference, as the mayor
Yes.
mentioned, yeah. The biggest
Well-
difference is you get more land now, and they'll probably build on Liberty now instead of later.
So under the CPS option, if I'm understanding it correctly, we would be giving more property or transferring more property to the CIC and putting that
No.
in changing the
Under the ruling.
rulings, okay. But under theirs, it would just be,
Well-
we would leave it the way that it is.
Well, we would,
That's not quite fair. So with Rulon's, it's another 30 to 40 feet in depth
Off of Liberty.
off of Liberty.
no, 55 feet it
So,
was.
55? Okay. So that is more land for the CIC.
Right.
However, on this one, that green area between the federal parking lot and our existing parking lot, if the court does not have to go there, that's 10,000 square feet times however many levels.
Right.
There could be another whole commercial
Right.
complex.
Which I think we put that in the TIF when we set up the district. I'll have to look.
If it's not the court, you're correct, it will
Yes.
be part of the TIF and it would be money generating.
But if
Well,
we
just
have to
remember, we
use it
can't go
for
back to
court-
the schools because they had made it very clear they didn't want us coming back because this is a 30-year TIF. But I think
That's
it's already in there. It's just a matter of what goes there. If it's going to be commercial,
Right.
income producing, we're going to benefit from it. If it's the
Right.
courthouse, there's not going to be the TIF benefit. There'll be a
Exactly.
different community benefit.
That's correct.
Right.
So on this, and I didn't have a chance to look at all these proposals or pictures because I was out of town. So with the rule and proposals, are they proposing that the deck go directly against the private redevelopment piece?
It's up to the private redeveloper to make that determination. Because right now, the footprint that would go to the CIC for Liberty would be an 18,900 square foot footprint. So if it's 1 story, 2 stories, 3 stories, or if they wanted to shrink that to get away from the deck, they could shrink it. But the maximum they could do is about 18,900 square foot
Okay,
footprint. That's
so
it.
they would have to, so it would be good to know to put that in our RFP because we haven't released that yet from the
Only if that
CIC.
one's selected. If this one's selected, we don't change anything.
Okay.
Right.
So what does everybody think?
Well, you meant, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bob.
Again, looking real long range at an unknown, like you mentioned, the federal courthouse. Federal courthouse at some point in time becomes available, then that property along with the open space there, then that's a very viable corner there for development.
Could be bigger, yes. Okay.
Patrick, with the design of this deck here, is it possible to take one of those corners and like move it so we have one on each end? Because I really don't think that that's a very appealing look for Elmwood. Okay, where that is, but if we could take the 2 towers and put one on opposing corners,
Yeah.
that might dress it up a little bit.
We talked a little bit with them in the interview, and I think there's some things they think they can do to enhance the northwest corner. I don't know if the design will allow them just to move the whole tower. I mentioned Leslie Traves was on our committee. We know we have to go to historic preservation. We have to get their approval. And she felt that to get their approval, we would have to do something different at that northwest corner and potentially add some more enhancements other places as well.
But remember, the reason it's over in the northeast corner is because it's the slope of the half a deck. So the people parking up on the top of the half a deck, if you move that tower, they would have to walk all the way from the top of that corner, all the way across the deck to get to the tower. That's why they stuck it in the northeast corner.
Also, if you look at this, there's nothing supposed to be here right now, so most people are either walking down here to City Hall, or they're walking out to Sully's that direction anyway, so that's probably why the stairwell's on that side.
Right, the only question I had about this stairway on the northeast side is there's a drop off there, right? There's a retaining wall by the police station in that
Right.
corner. So I didn't know how they're gonna get around, but they didn't have the design enough to see how that corner would act or interact.
One thing I do like about this design is the fact that we do have some quick parking places. If somebody needs to come in and pay a water bill and leave, they don't have to drive around the parking deck, find a spot, walk in, they just head, like we have now.
But we could do that in the parking deck too. We could have some spots reserved closest up to the 15. That would be covered.
It's just the interim. Yeah, we could set aside 15-minute spaces, handicap spaces, all of those. It's just the interim.
It's just during the construction.
Is there anything during construction that we could reconfigure the police parking lot a little bit? Because you would at least be at the level back behind the garage over here that you could come and get into City Hall if you had those be the handicap spots, just the back part of the police for 9 months? Or?
Yeah, the problem is where we would move the police to, because with the volume of cars they have, and then we have 2 public spots in the front, I mean, we run out of spaces
I
there.
was thinking either Rite Aid or the Historical Society.
Well, and we have the extra police cars over there and the detectives' cars and some of the dispatchers' cars.
Well, the historical side may be a good idea, because I never see any cars.
They're only there on Tuesday during the week.
Yeah,
Well, one day of
one day a
events,
week.
we cannot.
Well, we're at events, right, but I mean, I don't see, you know.
Yeah, one day a week they use it. We could, we do have a kind of a gentleman's agreement with them because we also plow it for them and try to keep it up. And they have not objected to us using it when other things have happened, but to use it all 8-9 months, you know, like.
Kimberly?
So, did anybody ask Ruin if they could accommodate some parking during construction in the interviews?
We did, and they cannot.
And why, what's the reason for that?
Mobilization.
The whole footprint to build the building.
Because they're gonna put the concrete, pour the concrete and the whole bottom level at once. So they're not gonna be like, we'll do half of it. It'll happen all at once.
That's what's gonna keep them on their timeline.
That's gonna keep on time.
It's like fast, go across.
So I think to keep us on our timeline, Patrick needs to know an answer, so we gotta take a poll here of what ones people like, and if there's any other questions.
I have another question though about the tower. If you can't move the towers on this, can't you, I don't know the cost, but if it had more brick, I guess it is that I think that the one reason it looks so different is this has a lot of brick, and this one doesn't. I mean, if that was.
It's all about money.
Can we take the old bricks from South Broadway?
Can this building be turned 180 degrees?
But there it is, that's the $250,000 right there. 'Cause if I
Should
would-
we go back? You want to speak
No,
to
no.
that again?
No, but I'm saying, so, I mean, you gotta, there's visual things that are visual, then there's economic issues and practical issues of during construction. So each one has benefits, as I mentioned, each one has problems. So the question is, what do you think would be best for the city? That's our decision. What do you think? So, Eric, you're first. Which one do you like? With considering all those factors.
Right now, I'm leaning towards the Ruin one because of the overall look, because of the opportunity to make up our money at a faster basis by expanding that building size. And I think, like you Lamb brought up at the beginning, I don't know that the Elmwood real estate is worth as much to a lot of people as Liberty is. But we're banking on a lot of what-ifs if this doesn't go through with the county.
What do you mean the county?
With the building the courthouse, I mean,
I was wondering, how do you involve in this?
the courthouse, that's what we're reserving the land for.
Well, right, I mean, there's always issues, I mean, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? What do you do? I mean, there's always gotta be, you gotta think about it all, but that's the question, do you say, well, I really don't wanna do it because I don't think it's gonna happen, and I really want it to happen here, or, you're right, that's the question, so, that's why we get paid the big bucks.
So you're leaning towards ruin?
I don't know if I'm set, but I'm leaning towards that one.
Paul?
Patrick, I have a question. Can that building there be turned 180 degrees?
Probably, well, we did have to look at it, you know, there's some elevation questions.
Okay, because I'm just thinking that if we turn it, that might be more aesthetically pleasing on Elmwood. Preserve some potentially valuable property.
I think, and I can tell you from listening to CPS, they really priced that out. They went an extra mile, and they know exactly what the cost is gonna be, because they got the prices now. And so they know, but I think some of it has to do with elevation too, because they're taking into consideration that, trying to minimize the earthwork, I think.
Right.
They mentioned about minimizing the earthwork. Yeah. Okay,
So what's your choice? That one or ruin?
It's behind door number 3. Aesthetically, I do like the ruin one.
I would have to go with ruin.
I think I like the Ruin one.
Bob, you're up.
I'd like to save that space, but the rule one, I think, based on everything, I like the rule one.
Bill, it's up to you.
Yeah, I don't think so. You know, could we not take out in front of City Hall, you know, where the front door, Is there a tree lawn somewhere? I don't know where we are, actually.
No, it's all, it goes from road to steps.
It goes right
So
to
we
step.
do have a couple areas there, it's just, the only thing there are the steps, so they'd have to go all the way around the back to get into the back door.
So I think he's talking about
He's talking about.
the future, in front of the city hall right now.
I'm just talking about where your office is there's no tree lawn there? is
There's
there?
tree lawn there.
There's tree lawn outside her windows,
Yeah,
but north of that is that big
yeah, the big
cement
stairs.
pad.
But I mean, could we temporarily take out that area right in front of where your windows are and have just a parallel park, have a place for people to park right there?
You just add a lot of money to the project.
No, I don't mean permanently, I just mean temporarily.
I mean,
But
take
still
it out,
have to
I
pay
mean,
for it.
That's what you were talking about, though, was.
when you say
Yeah,
take
I
it
don't know
out,
why we'd have to do that if we just let them park on the concrete, and then we'd have to direct them around the building. It's not gonna be that much closer to be
Yeah.
outside her window, and then they're getting out into traffic.
That's right.
And
So,
What building? A or B?
so it looks like everybody likes Rulon.
John, you didn't say what?
Well, I like Rulon. I voted for Rulon because I just like the fact that you have more economic viability. And I do understand the mayor's argument of the green space with the court.
It was not an argument.
Position, I say
Just like you
position.
did it, son.
But I like the fact that you can build a bigger building on Liberty now, which will give us more money towards the deck immediately instead of waiting. That to me sounds a little bit more enticing.
It also probably allows for more second and third floor apartments above that.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
We talked about an extra
And larger.
business.
And we talked about the
Larger.
configuration, because there'd be a hallway going north-south with the apartments,
Could be.
instead of just being apartments going,
Right.
north. There could be two sets of apartments going north-south, so that's kind of more attractive, but I kind of like that.
Because it's local too.
Well, that's kind of a benefit.
so the pressure's on
They
to
did a good job with the last one.
get that county project going.
Yes, sir.
So, I guess, do you need direction, Pat? I think you have it.
Yeah, before you vote.
Before you vote, he's gonna talk about how much more money it's gonna cost
Yeah,
us.
just to be clear,
So
our
go on.
consultant did recommend the other one.
Okay.
And the reason was financial, it came down to that. And, our budget is 3.8 billion, which is what Rulin's submitted. You'll see in the next item, we already have cost above that. We're gonna need 38,000 to move the Ohio Edison poles. We have to hire a testing firm. There's a lot of concrete that needs to be tested, that's on us. I estimated 50,000. I think last parking deck would cost us like 32 or 33,000. I put 50, we'll see what it is, maybe it won't be that much. But my point is, if we accept the 3.8, we're already above. the
But we gotta do that on that deck too.
Yeah, but Pat, on this deck, like you said, there probably historic preservation is gonna require some.
True, that's true. They may on this one as well, though. Who knows?
We're already over budget.
And projects, 3 to 4%. This is a guaranteed maximum, so I hope there'll be anything, but you never know.
Well, I guess the question is, you have, in the past, worked with Rulon on a deck, so you kind of know what they're gonna do, you kind of know what they ask for, and, that's the known quantity, that's
Yeah.
something that's worth something that you know, so there's a benefit to
It
that.
is. They were very good to work with the first time around.
So does everybody want to do I guess, Mayor, do you have any input that you want to have?
I'm good with what the council.
Okay, so everybody want the Rulon option number 2, I think it is, what is it called?
So we.
Option number 2? Yeah, so that's be a motion to approve and accept the proposal of alternative option number 2 from Rulon. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on that?
Do you need a emergency clause?
Yes.
Yes.
With the emergency clause?
My second includes the emergency clause.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
All right, so council, we will have a signed agreement from them that you would have to approve.
And now we go to 19071, agreement with Ohio Edison to remove those 5 poles.
Has to be done.
Well, it has to be done another time.
Move to approve with attached emergency clause also?
Yeah.
Second including the emergency clause?
And we're just removing 2, they're relocating 3 others.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Patrick, thanks. Thanks, Jonathan, for participating. No, we're not. Real estate purchase agreement, Mr. Huber.
I got this.
Oh, Mayor.
So, this is the lot across from the old Napa on South Elmwood Street that the county owned. Mr. Huber worked with the county to come to a purchase agreement of $50,000. There are other fees, closing fees, title work, a few of those things that we don't have the numbers yet on it, but we expect it to be less than $1,000, so we're asking for $51,000 to be appropriated. There's a budget amendment coming up as well for the same amount, and we expect it'll be less than that, not to exceed 50.
Out of the JED funds, is that where we talked about?
Yes, sir.
It's coming out of the JED money.
Move to approve the second.
The account number is actually listed on the RCA there.
With the emergency clause?
Yes, sir.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
My second includes the emergency clause.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Revision of job description, amending salary to Benefit Code 3107. This is 1974. Lorraine?
Thank you. Sometime back in December, Law Director Huber asked the commission to go in and look at the job descriptions and change all the, there's a physical demand section at the end of the job descriptions, and he wanted them moved under the essential job functions because of a legal issue he ran across. And so that's what we did.
Mr. Huber?
Everything Lorraine said is exactly correct.
Very good.
And
Any
the
other
Civil
questions?
Service Commission approved it as well.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 1975 budget amendments.
This is the $51,000 to be appropriated for the land acquisition.
Move to approve.
Do you need the clause on this one?
Yeah, needs an emergency clause.
No, appropriations are immediate.
Second, then.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 1976 increased expenditure for MNJ Technologies, PO 19852 MCRC. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. President. This request for increase to the PO for the MNJ Technologies is due to information that was unknown to IT at the time, which is that the new PCs will have to use a different cord to plug in the existing monitors. So we did just ask to make the PO for $24,000 just in case something else comes up, like more cords needed or additional battery backups or something like that. Thank you.
Questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I think that anything else to come before council before we recess into executive session?
I'll make a motion to move into executive session at 7:18 PM for two purposes. The first, to consider the purchase property for public purpose, which is the sale of the property, administer sensitive information given under a competitive bargaining advantage to a person whose personal or private interest is adverse to the public, and conferences with the law director for the city concerning disputes involving the city that are subject to pending or imminent court action, to include the mayor, the law director.
That's good.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Lamb.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Yes.
Coin. Simpson.
Yes.
Rose. Heffer.
Yes.
We're going to recess into executive session to discuss the items that Mr. Shield mentioned. We'll be coming out of executive session, taking no action on the items discussed. We'll be reconvening in the finance, adjourning for finance and going to council within the next 11 minutes.
What's that?
We are recessed.